Good morning. Welcome to Talkline on the MetroNews Radio Network.
Do not attempt to change the station. You are surrounded.
We interrupt this program to bring you an emergency news bulletin. Repeat, this is an emergency bulletin. Keep your radio turned on.
Holy smoke.
From the studios of the West Virginia Radio Corporation and the MetroNews Radio Network, the voice of West Virginia, comes the most powerful radio show in West Virginia. This is MetroNews Talkline with Hoppy Kercheval.
Check set lineup link. Activated Telos telephone. Switch network control from Charleston to Morgantown.
Stand by. Cue Hoppy. You're on.
Good morning. Welcome to Talkline on the MetroNews Radio Network in and around the great state. Hoppy Kercheval with you, Kyle Wiggs, our producer this morning, and Matt Sunday handling the video stream. You can watch us at wvmetronews.com. Coming up this morning, so the Blankenship jury Friday came out. They had a couple more questions, actually wanted definitions of specific words. Judge says, I can't give you that. Follow the instructions. Go back in. They had the weekend off. They're going to deliberate. They are deliberating again this morning. We'll get the latest from Harvey Payton and also Shauna Johnson on that this morning. Also coming up, we're going to talk about the changes in the Public Employee Insurance Agency, that the public hearings are now finished. PEI went out. They went across the state and said, okay, here are the changes we have to make. That means higher deductibles, higher out-of-pocket, higher copays for many of you who are on the public health insurance program in West Virginia. Retirees, higher premiums. This is what it is. A lot. I mean, a ton of response on that from public employees. We'll talk about that this morning. And also coming up, what are Catholic Charities? What is Catholic Charities in West Virginia doing concerning Syrian refugees? And that's been a big issue of debate over the last week, and we'll talk to them about that. That more coming up this morning. First up this morning, as I said, PEIA, a couple weeks back, Public Employee Insurance Agency said, the Finance Board said, this is what we got. This is the money we have coming in. This is the estimated cost going out. We've gone into reserves as far as we can. We can't raise premiums on active employees without an act of the legislature. They haven't done that. So in lieu of that, only a couple things you can do. And what's being proposed by PEIA is to raise out-of-pocket deductibles for current employees and premium increases for retirees to try to balance PEIA going forward. So they went out and had public hearings, had huge turnouts. Ted Cheatham is executive director of PEIA, joins us on MetroNews Talkline. Ted, good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Javi. Glad to join you.
Thank you, sir. So what did you learn? What did you hear most from public employees who turned out and retirees who turned out at the series of hearings you held across the state?
I think it's the standard message we hear almost every year, Hoppy, that people just can't afford these changes. If they're sick, they're going to have difficulty, finding drugs or hitting their out-of-pockets. And it's just hard on them. And they're concerned that, their children, won't stay in the state and continue to work and teach in the state because of the loss of benefits.
Are those valid complaints?
Oh, I think that, as we talked about before, Hoppy, I think that if you're not paying attention, if you're not staying healthy, and you get very sick, you are going to hit your out-of-pocket maximums and your high deductibles, and those indeed are going up. I mean, and they're fairly high. And if you're a low-income person working on the lower end of the pay scale for the state of West Virginia, it could be very difficult to cover those costs.
And I want to make clear, I want to give you a bit of an out here. I want to be clear about this because you guys, you're the executive director plus the finance board. You have a certain amount of money coming in. You got money going out. You have to make those decisions. You don't have the ability to do much beyond that. So I want to be clear about that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that is absolutely the case. You've nailed it correctly, Hoppy. I mean, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the state and to the taxpayers of this state to spend their money wisely, and we can't operate. We can't spend more than we bring in.
Mm-hmm. Ted, were there any recommendations, any proposed changes that were suggested during the public hearings that you all take into account and say, well, we might be able to do that? Anything that can be changed based on what you heard?
We didn't have any recommendations on that end other than not to make the cuts so drastic. We did poll the population on total family income as a means to adjust premiums. We also polled them on making a mandatory enrollment. In other words, making everybody fill out a piece of paper or go online during open enrollment. And overwhelmingly, about 70 to 75% of the people said no in our surveys on both of those issues.
Ted Cheatham's with us, Executive Director of PEIA. So this is what it is.
This is what it is.
Is there any possibility? Well, I'll tell you what. Senator Mike Hall is going to be on later in the program. He's chair of Senate Finance Committee, and I'll ask him more of the public policy question. Let me go back to this. When was the last time there was a premium increase for PEI, not for retirees, but for active employees?
I believe it was prior to 2011.
Okay, so it's been 4 years.
4 or 5 years, yes.
4 or 5 years for an increase. And also, when was the last time that the state, the governor's office, the administration, with the approval of the legislature, put more money into PEI? Because the state obviously has a responsibility to hold up 80% of that.
That would be the same, Hoppy. Those are the same dates. Now, I would tell you there have been some one-off cash infusions to solve some problems over the years to avoid a benefit cut, but it didn't go to premiums, so we didn't raise premiums as a result. But it was only about $3.5 million, one specific issue several years ago. But realistically, no new revenue from the state.
Ted, over the last 4 or 5 years, could this burden have been eased a little bit if there had been slight increases in premiums over those years, or slight additional deposits by the state into PEIA?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we've done, Hoppy, as well as we can, is we've slowly been spinning out the reserves, making minor benefit cuts over the last, we've held 1 year in those last 4 or 5 years. We've held 1 year constant with no changes. Other than that, we've always reduced some co-pays and reduced some of the benefits. As we spent the reserve down over those years to try to mitigate that and keep that very slow. And some additional cash infusion would have been helpful to do the same.
Yeah. So this is coming as kind of a gut check, because with the spending of reserves and other steps, it's been held kind of in check, hasn't it, for the last 4 or 5 years?
It really has. The benefits have changed. I looked over I took out the public hearings, Hoppy, the last 9 years. I've been at PEIA now for 9 years, believe it or not. And I wanted to look at what a single person looked like with their plan of benefits 9 years ago and what they look like today. And we've been running very well, very close to what a market baskets of goods has done over the last 9 years with normal inflation. I mean, we're right there. We've done a fairly good job of managing these benefits over the years. This is an anomaly. This year, it's all come to a head.
Yeah. Now, of course, I know you heard from public employees who said, but most of us have not had a pay raise or not have had significant pay raises over the same time. So now when we get hit with a higher out-of-pocket, higher co-pays, higher deductibles, that you're losing ground. They'll argue they're losing ground because they haven't had any pay increases. You probably heard that, I'm sure.
I heard that a lot. I also heard that, years ago, there's people that stand up and remember when they believe that they gave they forewent a pay increase for increased benefits. Way before my time, but that is an argument that's still out there in the public hearings.
Yeah. Where people say, well, we know we're not going to make more or even as much as the private sector, but we have an expectation of better benefits, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, Ted Cheatham is with us, Executive Director of PEIA. The turnout, it seemed as though, and I've been to some of your meetings, it seems as though the turnout was maybe larger this year than any time in recent memory. Is that fair to say, or was it about the same?
No, that is fair to say. I would say, 50 to 100 people more per meeting, at least, around the state. So it was a great turnout.
But not much you can do based on what they said.
I really can't, and that's the problem going to be with putting the board presentation together and the recommendations for the board for December 3rd. Is I don't have another option.
Nothing else you get. Is there? There really isn't. I mean, I know the PEI Finance Board looks at this stuff pretty closely. There really isn't. There really is nothing else substantial that you can do without without the legislature raising the premiums of currently employed state workers, or without a significant infusion of cash through the budget, right?
Well, that's true, unless you want to get really drastic. I mean, I wouldn't propose this at all, but Hoppy, there's an exchange out there. There's, we supplement retirees at 70%. I mean, there are exchanges out there for retirees. The benefits aren't as good as what we offer, but there would be some subsidies. There's other things that are more getting away from from taking care of our retirees or our actives that are very drastic that I don't think we should undertake. But I mean, without more money, all we can do is reduce the cost outlay.
Could retirees, if they're not happy with the premium increase or they're not happy with whatever, could they pull out of PEIA and take the subsidy and go through the exchange?
Yes, they could.
I don't think that would be
right
a better
now
deal, by the way. I don't think that'd be a better deal just off the top of my head. But
the benefits are definitely not as good as what we offer. But if you got subsidized on the exchange because of your income level, your premium might be better than what we offer. There's, again, cost of getting into the insurance and cost of paying when you're sick. However, I don't believe at this time they could get any benefit on the exchange from a subsidy because we offer a plan to them.
Ted, Ted Cheatham's with us, PEI. Ted, I don't want to put you on this spot because you're not the policymaker, you're the executive director, but you are familiar, of course, with plans across the country. And it's hard to imagine a plan, I know our personal plan, it's hard to imagine a plan that would go for 4 or 5 years without any premium increases. I mean, that's just, I thought every year, everybody who has some kind of insurance, look what happened in the exchange. I think the exchange increase this year is like 24%. So I think everywhere you look, almost annually, there are premium increases, which is the reality.
That is a true statement. Medical trends are going up at 5 to 6 to 7% a year. It has been for almost every year.
Yeah. All right. So when's the final decision made here?
December 3rd, our board meeting, 1:00.
And you do not foresee a substantial change in what people heard in the public meetings?
I do not.
Okay. Ted Cheatham, Executive Director of the Public Employee Insurance Agency. Ted, I know it's been a rugged couple of weeks, and I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Hoppy.
All right. Yeah, okay, a lot of different angles here. I mean, one is that I don't know of anybody who has health insurance who hasn't seen a premium increase or increases in the last 4 or 5 years. However, so one could argue that if there had been gradual premium increases in PEIA premiums, that it wouldn't be as much of a gut punch right now. The other argument is if that had been done in conjunction with the state putting more money into PEIA to cover costs, then you wouldn't be hit as hard right now. And also, I think that state employees have a point when they say many of them haven't had a pay raise in 4 or 5 years or one time in 4 or 5 years, and now you see your health insurance costs, your out-of-pocket and your deductible going up, even though if you're a working employee, your premium does not go up. But it's tough. It's a challenge. Okay, we'll take a break and be back. Stay with us.
At MVB Bank, we try to pique your interest. So listen up. With our most valuable checking with interest account, you'll earn high interest on your transactions with no monthly fees and nationwide ATM refunds when qualifications are met. With our MVB app and mobile deposit, that's just the beginning. MVB most valuable checking with interest. Now that's highly interesting. Open an account online today at mvbbanking.com or visit one of our convenient local branches. MVB, your financial life made easy. Member FDIC.
The event you've been waiting for is here. The Northside Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Truck Black Friday Blockbuster Sales Event. Northside's pulling out all the stops with huge incentives and ultra-low percentage rates. Buy any 2015 Ram 1500 truck and get 0% financing for 75 months and up to $4,000 in rebates. Yes, I said $4,000 in rebates. Heard in Northside Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Trucks, your central West Virginia destination for savings, or visit on the web at northsidewv.com.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Let's go to Simon Owen, Fox News Radio in London. Simon, good morning. Tell us more about the ongoing investigation into the terrorist attack. Now it seems there's a lot of focus on Brussels, and what are Belgian authorities doing?
Well, they've shut down all sorts of things in Brussels, from the subway network to schools to universities. And this is day 3 of this security alert. They've put the terror threat level at its highest notch, which means all these extra things kick in, and there are about 1,000 security personnel on the streets, including some very heavily armed soldiers patrolling central Brussels, this being, you know, the headquarters of the EU are there, the headquarters of NATO are there, a lot of businesses and other institutions. And right now, it's not that easy to get around. I don't think it's fair to say it's a ghost town, but certainly the streets are a lot quieter than they would be normally. And the Belgian authorities saying the city faces a serious and imminent threat, possibly along the lines of what was seen in Paris about 10 days ago.
Wow, that is serious stuff, especially when they say imminent threat, which implies that that a major attack is being planned, does it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think they say they've got specific intelligence that suggests this is the only option available to them, because this is a pretty drastic move for a major Western European city to shut much of itself down in the face of a terror threat. This is not what the image that Western European governments want to be putting out there to Islamist militants, is that this is what you can do with a few threats or by planning something. So I think it is probably a last-ditch resort from them. But you know, there is a particular suburb of Brussels that has been the focus of investigations since the Paris attacks happened. The Belgian government has been throwing money at sort of anti-terror investments and all sorts of initiatives it's announced last week, which to me almost sounds like they're conceding that there was something not quite right in this suburb. And unfortunately, it's a bit late to sort it out, at least on this occasion at least. Maybe they can prevent something in the future. But now they are left in this position where on Saturday they said there is an imminent threat. And then Saturday came and went, Sunday came and went, then the working week has restarted, and still the city is all but closed down. We don't know when they might be talking about opening it up again. They've conducted something like 25 raids in the last couple of days and arrested 21 people in that time. But certainly when we checked in with the prosecutor's office this morning, they'd found no firearms or ammunition or explosives at any of these raids, and also no sign of the number one guy they're looking for, which is a man called Salah Abdel Salam, who was thought to be involved in the Paris attacks 10 days ago, is from Belgium, is from Brussels, is from this particular suburb, but has since vanished. And there seems to be a bit of a thinking that he's still there, but they certainly aren't finding him yet.
Simon Owen, Fox News Radio back in London. Simon, also there are reports that some of the suspects in the Paris attack, that they may have been on the radar, so to speak, of French authorities, but somehow slipped through the cracks, or at least there's some suggestion that French intelligence may have muffed this a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a fair criticism or not, but what do you know, if anything, about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably too early to say whether it's a fair criticism or not, but certainly at least the guy who was seen as the string puller, if you like, who they killed in a police raid on Wednesday, he was very much on the radar. He was fairly well known as ISIS militants go. He boasted about how he was able to flip back and forth between Europe and the Middle East, and yet he was still able to do it. And there was this extraordinary situation where French police conducted a raid in Paris last week, where we saw, this guy Abdelhamid Aboud was in Syria. That was the indication that I think had been given by the authorities, although maybe they did know better. They wouldn't necessarily make it public if they did. But we thought he was in Syria, and then it turned out he was in Paris the whole time. So if he is this high profile, if he is this dangerous, and French authorities say they'd foiled 6 attacks in about 6 months, and he was behind 4 of them, if he was that dangerous, how on earth was he getting in and out of European countries without being checked? So, yeah, certainly, at least in one case, there's going to be a situation where, why wasn't this spotted beforehand? Maybe they should have detected it. Or is it simply the case that there are so many people now that, particularly in a country like France and Belgium and the UK as well, there are so many to keep track of that it's simply not possible for the authorities to do that? Because yes, there was the ringleader, but there were also other guys who'd been flagged for various things to extremism in the past, and yet they weren't able to prevent what was a pretty well-organized attack.
Simon Owen, Fox News Radio in London. Simon, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Back to PEIA, tweet from Mountaineer. Hoppy, the talk by the PEA chairman is scaring the heck out of this retiree. Dave, Hoppy, we have to cut benefits. We have to subsidize. We have to cut benefits. We have to subsidize the horse and dog track industry. Ask Governor Tomlin. Hoppy, so where are the lowered costs and the complete coverage promised by the president? Well, one thing that we heard on the healthcare ACA was that this was going to help bring healthcare costs under control. I don't see evidence that's happened, especially when you look at the exchanges. I mean, the premium increases in the exchanges, the premium increases have been pretty dramatic. Now, either the healthcare for those who are in the exchange has cost more than projected, or they're not getting the healthy people in the exchanges. So that's a little bit different animal from PEI, but PEI faces some of the same circumstances, in that the costs continue to go up. And if you don't raise premiums, and if you don't raise the amount of money the employer, the state, is putting in, then guess what? Then you have to have higher deductibles, you have to have higher copays, and also with the PEI proposal now, the retirees, their premiums are going up. So it's tight, man. It's tight. And we'll ask Senator Mike Hall, chairman of Senate Finance, next hour, if he thinks there's any additional money out there for PEIA. This is Talkline on MetroNews, the voice of West Virginia. 10:30, let's get a news update. Check in with the MetroNews Radio Network. Find out what's happening statewide this hour, all across the great state of West Virginia.
West Virginia Metro News, I'm Shauna Johnson. The operator of a Raleigh County clinic says he believes his facility is being unfairly targeted. The State Department of Health and Human Resources is seeking an injunction to shut down Cole Country Clinic for alleged improper pain medication practices. But Dr. Michael Kostinko claims other reasons are at play.
Our counterclaim is that they are treating me as a whistleblower, and that they're being intimidating, harassing, and retributive, and that they have acted to limit the record so that it doesn't include evidence that we might use in any future judicial review.
A hearing on the DHHR's preliminary injunction request is this morning. We're less than 6 months away from primary election day in West Virginia, a primary election that will bring the first nonpartisan election of judges in the Mountain State. Secretary of State Natalie Tennant says because of the removal of party affiliations, judicial races are shifting to the backs of ballots.
With the education that we'll be putting out is that it will be toward the end of the ballot. folks are used to see the Supreme Court as a statewide race near the top of the ballot, but it will be at the end as you see the nonpartisan school board elections.
The judicial decisions made in May will be final. School enrollment is down statewide in West Virginia. The State Department of Education reports a decline of almost 2,760 students this school year, double the declines in recent years. You're listening to Metro News for 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
Being a great hunter requires a lot of skill and a commitment to safety. Hunting for a great truck, however, only requires tracking down your nearest Ram dealer. That's because Ram 1500 is the only truck with an available class-exclusive eco-diesel engine that gets up to 29 miles per gallon highway and can haul 9,200 pounds. See your local Ram dealer today. Guts, glory, Ram. Class based on light-duty pickups. EPA estimated 29 mpg highway based on HFE eco-diesel V6 4x2. Actual results may vary. Towing capacity when properly equipped.
Hunting from a tree stand offers a tremendous advantage when you're hunting, but getting to and from that perch can be a dangerous challenge. Most accidents that involve a tree stand come as hunters are either going up or coming down. Always wear a safety restraint system from the moment you leave the ground to the moment you return, and there are aids available that allow you to be tethered against a fall even when climbing or descending the ladder. Stay safe this fall. This hunter safety message, a service of Ram Trucks, made for those who stand apart.
A December 4th deadline is looming for an agreement on Capitol Hill on a 6-year federal highway funding bill. State Transportation Secretary Paul Maddox says funding stability has been absent for a decade.
That helps us considerably, considering since 2005 we've only had a bill longer than 2 years one time, and we've worked on 35 extensions, so it's going to be a relief.
Both the U.S. Senate and U.S. House have approved similar funding bills. From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Shauna Johnson.
Talkline on Metro News. Welcome back. Christmas in Shepherdstown kicks off Friday. Join the town for a bonfire, a chili and cornbread supper, the lighting of the town tree, and the arrival of Santa Claus. The annual tradition lasts until Christmas Eve and features many different events every weekend. For more information, visit go2wv.com or call 800-225-5982. 800-225-5982. Christmas in Shepherdstown. It starts Friday. Christmas is here, ladies and gentlemen. And we say that now even before Thanksgiving. All right, the Don Blankenship trial, jury back at it this morning. Friday, the jury sent a question out. Keep in mind that Blankenship is charged with, in counts 2 and 3, he's charged with lying about the safety practices at Massey Energy, lying to investors and lying to the Securities and Exchange Commission. So the jury asks Judge Berger if she could further define the words condone and strive. Further definition. Harvey Payton, legal analyst, joins us on Metro News Talkline. Harvey, the judge said no, she couldn't do it. But before we get to that, what do you think the jury's trying to get here with wanting a specific definition of condone and strive?
Well, I think they're trying to quantify or qualify the statement that Mr. Blankenship caused to be sent. I mean, did the meaning of condone, did that fit within his state of mind? And I mean, really, it's a surprise to me. That's sort of been a question bandied around observers when you look at the quality of the government's case on the false statements. What did condone mean in the minds of Blankenship when he edited that press release? What did strive? You make an effort to. I mean, those are words that are subject to some mild interpretation, and when it's an accusation that a person is guilty of a criminal offense, for not editing that particular word, those two words, condone and strive, to reflect what the government alleges is the true nature of Massey's safety effort, that's tough. I mean, I'm really surprised that the judge may not have said, well, I can't give you further instructions. Those are not legal terms. They're not.
But aren't they, is that overthinking it? Because look it up. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
condone is
why wouldn't the jury ask for a dictionary?
And I don't want to be glib here, but condone means to approve, right? I mean, that would be, if you condone something, you approve of something, and strive would be you're trying to achieve something. So, I mean, are they overthinking this?
Well, it could well be. It's a serious business.
Yeah.
A man's accused of lying for using one phrase as opposed to another, and apparently the jury feels a need to nail that down more conclusively. It wasn't defined in the instructions. It really wasn't discussed in the closing arguments. The defense stayed away from it completely because they wanted an instruction that was completely different given to the jury. The defense wanted an instruction saying that any statement had to be one which was capable of being proven A, true, or B, false. A bright line, as opposed to, did his state of mind fall within the accepted meaning of, quote, condone?
It's, Harvey, it's evident. It is tough, but it's evident, too, that this jury is divided. It's evident that this jury, I mean, it's been, 16 hours, 17 hours now. I mean, it's evident they are divided in this case, isn't it?
Well, it's evident they're having a difficult time, and I think that, first of all, the statement on Thursday by the jury that they were unable to agree, given the fact that they've deliberated now for another day and a half without announcing any deadlock, I would attribute that just to the jurors' unfamiliarity with the problem-solving process of deliberating this huge, massive information. But beyond that, does it not demonstrate the difficulty of this case from the government standpoint? I mean, the government put on 27 witnesses over 23 days and offered hundreds of documents in evidence. The defense rested immediately without offering any evidence by the defense. And in the face of that action, the jury has still taken the better part of 3 days now and can't arrive at a decision.
So does that
we're having difficulty with the government case.
Yeah, so does that suggest an inherent weakness in the government's case? It does, doesn't it?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a circumstantial evidence case, and it's a long stretch from the. I mean, this is the same thing that we became aware of in the opening statement. I mean, the government wants to draw a line from the working faces at Upper Big Branch to Mr. Blankenship's office over in Belfry, Kentucky, and the defense has worked diligently to put all that into the context of a big organization, with a lot of moving parts, and a man at the top who may be voicing his desire to do one thing, but the organization's not getting the message to the bottom. I mean, that's their defense.
Harvey, let me talk with the jury for a minute. Harvey Payton's with us, legal analyst for MetroNews. Is there, and this would be in the instructions, and I would imagine, but especially when the jury said we can't reach a decision and the judge sent them back, and I know there's this concept called the Allen charge where you say get in there and come up with something, kind of force them a little bit. But if you are on this jury, or if one is on this jury, and you are one of one or two that are leaning one way or another, everybody else is leaning the other way, given the charge to the jury, at some point do you have an obligation to reevaluate your position, or maybe say, well, that's what the majority believes, and we have an obligation to come up with a verdict, and I can't, where does that fit in, if it fits in at all?
Well, it fits in because, the answer is yes. Jurors have an obligation to deliberate in good faith and not act with stubbornness or pride or prejudice. At the same time, that the countervailing consideration is you shouldn't concede a heartfelt belief one way or the other, but certainly if you're in the minority, and that's what the judge eventually, if this jury comes back again and says that they are deadlocked, it's all in the hands of the jury. Now, the judge doesn't give any other instructions. This Allen charge is not something the judge can just do because deliberations are taking a long time. It's given in response to a note from the jury that they are finally deadlocked.
Right.
At that point, the judge says, if you are in a distinct minority, you have a duty not to concede, but you have a duty to re-examine your thought processes and the thought processes of your fellow jurors to determine if your doubt is a reasonable one way or the other. I mean, that's the mildly coercive nature of the Allen charge that the defendants always object to, but that's what it says.
I wonder, too, Harvey, if, again, this is just wild speculation, but you got 12 people. You can't have 12. You can't have 12 people all best friends and want to hang out together. You got different personalities. I wonder, too, you would imagine that there might be, if you and I were on the jury and you and I got to argue about something, I might think either consciously or subconsciously, I'm not giving in to that SOB, Harvey Payton. I'm not giving in. I think the guys, something like that. There is a human element there too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's why there are cottage industries in the United States of jury analysts and shadow jurors and jury consultants who look at as much information as they have available on individual jurors to see if you have people who are at a socioeconomic level or a work level or an education level that might be prone to stubbornness or acquiescence. And since the beginning, one of the things that the public has operated at a disadvantage on is no one even knows where these folks live. Jury selection was conducted out of the public view, and we discussed this early on. I didn't think it was appropriate. Most people didn't either. Judge Berger did. But in a case where the first question on people's lips was, can this man get a fair trial? You would think as much information as there is available about those who would try him. Now, keeping in mind, of course, that idea has been completely dispelled. The fact that you've got 12 people selected from the Southern District of West Virginia who, after 23 days of government evidence, no evidence by the defense, have taken over 3 days of deliberations and not arrived at a verdict, would dispel the fact that you've got a group of people here who are just so far biased against Don Blankenship, they can't wait to convict him.
That's
true. That one's out the window.
That's
right?
a great point. Yeah. Because if there were an absolute bias against him, they would have rung him up in 3 hours. No matter
you would have had a Mississippi burning type verdict, from one of the old 1960s murders, where you panel a jury of.
How close is this jury, in your opinion? How close is this jury to being a hung jury?
I don't think so. I thought so on Thursday and Friday morning, but when this note came out about asking about the meaning of words, thinking, now I'm thinking more along the lines that they'll probably get a verdict. I mean, they got to be leaning in favor of the defense, you would think, just because of the amount of time that's passed. And all they're talking about is the government's case. All they're talking about is the government's case.
And also, since they're focused on the words condone and strive on counts 2 and 3, maybe they've already decided on count 1. Now they're just trying to, get it done on 2 and 3. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's illogical.
That they would go in order.
They just got tired of arguing about one and they're going to circle back. But, you would think you're going to get at least a verdict. I mean, they don't have to decide every count. A jury can find him guilty of one count and hang on the other.
That's true. Okay, that's true. So they could come back and say we're hung on 1, but we have these verdicts on 2 and 3.
Yeah, and generally the court would let them go ahead and announce their verdict, and if they can't agree on the others, discharge them.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
We'll see.
Okay, good point. All right, Harvey Payton, serving as legal analyst on the Don Blankenship trial. Jury deliberations continue. Harvey, thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, good to talk to you. Yeah, I forgot about that. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you could be hung on. You got 3 counts. You could be hung on 1 or 2 of them and come back with a verdict on 1 or 2 of them. All right, we'll be back. Stay with us.
When you drive impaired in West Virginia, you break the law and endanger the lives of others. Law enforcement across the state is committed to keeping impaired drivers off the road. If you drive impaired, be prepared to pay the price. There are consequences. It's simple, West Virginia. Drive sober or get pulled over.
Hunger, injustice, poverty. We see it, but what can we really do? Where is the hope? The hope is in you, and Catholic Charities West Virginia can help you extend hope, grace, and mercy to the most vulnerable in our communities. They're calling all people of goodwill to serve our brothers and sisters mired in poverty, burdened with disease and injustice. Join with Catholic Charities West Virginia and change a world. Visit CatholicCharitiesWV.org because the hope is in you.
This is Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Talkline on MetroNews. Welcome back. Hoppy Kercheval with you. So, start of a deer season today in West Virginia, and you have to make sure you have your DNR ID number. Every hunter in the woods today needs a DNR ID number. That's your unique number that you use to check in the game. When you check in the deer today, they're going to say, what's your DNR ID number? Every hunter and trapper must know theirs. Get yours today at wvhunt.com, wvhunt.com. Now, concerning education standards in West Virginia, the State Board of Education had those public hearings, came out and said, okay, we're going to repeal and replace the standards. The attempt being by the Board of Education to comply with what the legislature wanted them to do, that is go out, get input into the standards that were based on Common Core. Board of Education comes back as, okay, we heard you, we're going to repeal the current standards which are based on Common Core and replace them with new standards. The supporters say this is a step in the right direction, and legislative leaders say they're looking at it side by side. But naturally, there's still critics to Common Core who say this is nothing but eyewash. Mike Folk is probably one of the leading critics of what's happened here. He joins us on MetroNews Talkline. Mike, good morning. Can you hear me?
Mike, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Of course, I'm about as far away as that guy I called you earlier from Fox News.
Yeah, you're in London. You're a pilot, and you're in London right now. But so what is your objection to what the Board of Education has done?
Well, let's be very clear. I look at things and I do my research, and I look through the K through 11 math standards so far. I'm not quite done, the K through 12. But I can tell you, I went through it line by line using the executive summary, showing the changes. And as an example, for instance, in grade 8, there were about 5 changes to all the standards. Well, 3 of the changes were simply removing italicized words and leaving them as regular lettering, and 2 of them were reworded. In another 3 or 4 examples, they literally substituted the abbreviation EG for the words for example. In other words, there are no changes to the standards. Now, there was an addition, in other words, putting cursive writing back in. But first of all, Holly Branch, who was on the original review committee, who attended my education forum, said that the West Virginia Next Gen standards are word-for-word Common Core. And she also went on further to say that the review that was done through the town halls and the academic spotlight online was a, quote, joke. And this is from somebody, and I'll leave it with one other thing. I know a teacher that attended the 2-day session up in Morgantown, and she said, and you actually said this on the radio, I think, last week, when I sat down with her for an hour before I came to Charleston for interims last week, she said it appears that they are just putting lipstick on a pig. That's from somebody that was in Morgantown for 2 days. And you have to question yourself, why would you not allow a teacher that's on that review team to take home to the hotel that night. The book.
Well, I don't know that, but they did, Mike. They did take.
That's what she told me.
They did take public comments for 3 months from anybody who wanted to make a public comment.
First of all, they did not take public comments. You had to rewrite the standard. And this is, again, if you watched, and I've got it on my Facebook page, WV Delegate Michael Folk, or Mike Folk, I got the YouTube videos of 2 teachers who spoke at my town hall forum, and what they said was very damning to the whole process. This is a joke what this man is doing in West Virginia. He really, and I'm talking about Martirano and some of the board members, they must think that the citizens of West Virginia are so gullible to just say that we're going to call repeal, so we repealed it. Well, the reality is it's really not any changes at all except for including cursive writing for the most part.
Well, cursive writing and the multiplication tables. But what is it then? What exactly, can you give me a standard or 2 or 3? Boy, we got a terrible phone line, but that you specifically object to that are in the new proposed standards.
Well, first of all, let's talk about both standards because they're the same. They're not any different. Number one, and I've had graduate level statistics classes, and they're trying to treat, and this is straight from Holly Branch. She said they're trying to teach regression analysis to 9th graders. Now, I found that myself.
Boy, Mike, we'll have to take it up. The phone line is absolutely abysmal. I mean, we got all kind of interference. There's a huge delay. We'll continue to follow the story, and we'll be back. Stay with us.
Stupid pipe! Oh no.
Honey, are you all right?
There's a time and a place to do things yourself, but there are some things that should be left to the professionals. When it comes to building your dream home, remodeling the bathroom, rewiring the kitchen, or fixing the furnace, you need the best help and the best materials you can get. That's when you need to go to the Home Builders Association of West Virginia. Their members are skilled professionals and retailers specializing in your home. It's your home. Don't settle for anything less than the best.
Contact the Home Builders Association of West Virginia online at hbawv.org for a list of licensed professionals and suppliers in your area. Go to hbawv.org today. This message brought to you by our marketing partners, Lowe's of North Central West Virginia, Brick Street, 84 Lumber, Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh, ProBuild, SJ Neathog, Valcon, Wincor, and West Virginia Housing Development Fund. The Home Builders Association of West Virginia. Go to hbawv.org today.
This Saturday, the West Virginia Mountaineers return home for a Big 12 matchup with the Iowa State Cyclones. Join MetroNews for the best, most listened to game day coverage. The pregame fun starts at 9 a.m. with the Jeep Gold and Blue Countdown, followed by the Sports Brunch. Game line kicks off at high noon. Then postgame analysis begins at 3 with the Gold and Blue Wrap-Up, brought to you by the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. Don't miss game day coverage at its best, beginning Saturday morning at 9, right here on MetroNews.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Talkline on MetroNews. I started clipping today, printing stories about the excessive political correctness on college campuses, and I have 1, 2, 3, and then all of a sudden they started to add up, and I made a pile of them today. Don't have time to get to them all. University of Kansas, the Student Executive Committee has issued a vote of no confidence to the current student body leadership over the reported slow response concerning a host of diversity demands. At the University of Ottawa in Canada, yoga has become the latest victim of political correctness after a free class of yoga was canceled because of complaints that the lessons were unacceptable cultural appropriation of a non-Western practice. The person who did the yoga class got a notice that while yoga is this is what the notice said. According to the Ottawa Sun, staff at the Center for Students with Disabilities wrote, while yoga is a really great idea and accessible and great for students, there are cultural issues of implication involved in the practice. Yoga has been under a lot of controversy lately due to how it's being practiced. Yoga class canceled at the University of Ottawa in Canada. University of California, Santa Cruz, student government reportedly pressured a Jewish student representative to abstain from voting on an anti-Israel divestment resolution over fears of a Jewish agenda at work on campus. Student Union Assembly at UC Santa Cruz voted last week to divest from 5 companies that do business with Israel. The Safe Spaces fad has reached a newspaper. The official newspaper of California's Claremont McKenna College announced this month it would have a column dedicated to people of color for an unfiltered voice in the media, so whatever they want to put in there would be fine. Finally, Yale speaks out in support of those 2 members of the faculty who were under attack because they said free speech protected whatever Halloween costume you wanted to wear. I'm telling you, at least Yale stepped up finally on this, and that's just a couple I picked out this morning. This movement will eat its own. Eventually, they will eat their own because eventually, since the standard is so low, everybody will be offended by something. We'll be back in 6 minutes. This is Talkline on Metro News. Metro News is the voice of West Virginia. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Talkline on the Metro News Radio Network. Hoppy Kercheval with you. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Later this half hour. So more on this PEI issue. Also coming up, a Syrian refugee issue in West Virginia. What's Catholic Charities doing? But first this half hour, we're going to start with the Syrian refugee issue. And Jared Halpern, Fox News Radio in Washington, D.C., because this is very much now a political issue, especially with what the House of Representatives did last week and all the presidential candidates weighing in on it. Jared, good morning. Thanks for joining us. What are the candidates, some of them at least, saying about it?
Well, those that are talking about it are largely backing up what the House has done. There seems to be some, debate amongst the Republican presidential candidates about who to let in, but there's wide agreement, obviously, that everybody should be vetted, and a lot of skepticism about whether or not the Obama administration should be doing that. So in response to the House vote specifically, which did not end the president's plan to bring in refugees, but instead just set up an additional layer of scrutiny, that's got a widespread support. Where there's differences is obviously on some of the details. You have guys like Ted Cruz who have suggested that, we don't allow refugees from Muslim countries, or we only have refugees that are Christian. You have guys like Jeb Bush and others that have said a religious test is un-American, that's not the way that we should be handling this. There's a way to do it responsibly without setting up a religious test. And so that seems to be where a lot of the dividing lines are. And, of course, as is always the case in these types of conversations, Donald Trump seems to be taking up the most oxygen in the room as he sort of wavers on whether or not he would set up a database for Muslim Americans. It still seems unclear. He made it pretty clear, I thought, in the interview with NBC. He's kind of backtracked a little bit, although has and hasn't, sort of depending on who he's talking to. And then, obviously, raising eyebrows with the suggestion that there were thousands, I think he said, of Muslim Americans in the aftermath of 2001 in New Jersey that were cheering that, something that has been shown to be untrue by not just officials in New Jersey, but by the police who were there as well.
Yeah, there's a lot there to chew on with Trump on this, Jared. And I watched the interview with NBC, and it was one that was one of those, and you've been on a lot of those, somebody's working the line and somebody sticks a mic in there. And he did, I thought, agree with the suggestion that there should be a registry.
Let's be clear, the reporter did bring it up. Now, I think the reporter brought it up because of things that had been said in the rally. I don't think it was an out of the blue, hey, let's ask Trump if he'd set up a database for Muslims. That idea had sort of been hinted at, maybe a generous term for it, in the rally that preceded that, right? And then so the reporter asked, and then Donald Trump, I thought, very clearly answered the question, and then was given a chance to clarify and answered the question again, and then in subsequent interviews has said pretty much the same thing. And that's kind of the way that Donald Trump's campaign has always operated, isn't it?
Yeah, and now, on this latest issue, where I think he doubled down, as they say, this morning again, said thousands of people were cheering in Jersey City, New Jersey. And then I remember.
Unclear. I mean, there has not been anything to. The Washington Post did a pretty thorough investigation where they went back and looked, at news clips from 2001, and nothing has been seen. Now there was at the time news coverage of cheering in Muslim countries. The Palestinian Authority cheered it. I think there was cheering in other Muslim communities abroad, but there has been nothing that has been outright pointed to in this country. And Republicans, I think, are trying to figure out how to respond to that. I thought the strongest repudiation came from Governor Pataki, who was governor of New York at the time, who said this clearly never happened. I saw a statement earlier today from Chris Christie, who's the current governor of New Jersey, was not at the time, who said he doesn't recall that happening, but sort of steered clear as to, a more definitive answer. At any rate, it's catching on, and again, it's just sort of the way that Donald Trump's campaign has operated, right? He says something, and then you hold firm on it, and then we move on to the next thing that he says.
That's what I was going to say. By 4 o'clock this afternoon, you'll have another story entirely that will, so.
That's one way, I guess, to sort of move on from it. There'll be something else, I'm sure, that everybody has to react to.
Yeah, I got you. Jared Halpern, Fox News Radio. Thanks, Jared. We appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Good talking to you. I wrote about this today, about the refugee situation, and I have a couple of observations about this. One is that there already is a pretty high level of scrutiny for refugees coming into the country. And here's an interesting figure. 2014, 70,000 refugees entered the United States. 70,000. They came from 64 different countries, from Azerbaijan to Yemen, and yes, from Syria. And something like 2,000 Syrian refugees have resettled in the United States since the Civil War began there 4 years ago, since 2011. Now, there is a pretty rigorous screening process that's in place now for refugees in general, for refugees. I read about this over the weekend. Refugees from all countries. And by the way, there is a religious aspect to it because you can be a refugee. You say, well, we don't have any religious test. And we don't have a test, but you can be a refugee, or one of the qualifications of being a refugee is if you're subjected to persecution based on politics or religion. So if you are therefore your religion would become relevant if you were persecuted for being of a particular religion in your country. So religion then would be relevant. But there is a pretty rigorous screening process that includes biographic and biometric security checks, checking records and fingerprinting. Databases are cross-referenced with the National Counterterrorism Center, the Pentagon, domestic and international law enforcement agencies, the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. So what the House has proposed is another level of scrutiny. I'm not exactly sure what all the intimate details that are involved, but there currently is a pretty intense level of scrutiny for refugees coming into the country. Now, having said that, I would just say this, that I do understand why the House would do what they've done. I mean, people are concerned. These are uneasy times. These are not normal times. The people are nervous. You see what happened in France. So it's understandable that people would be nervous. I don't think, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think this is an argument, even despite what you hear on talk radio and despite what you see on television. I don't think this is about whether the United States should or should not let refugees into the country, let Syrian or Iraqi refugees into the country. I think this is more about, because there is a certain duality here. I mean, you can be heartbroken at seeing what those Syrian refugees are going through, and you can want to open our great nation to some of those people to come here to do our part and to help resettle those folks. At the same time, you can also be concerned about security in the country based on what happened in France and what happened on 9/11. So those don't have to be competing concerns. They're not mutually exclusive, I don't think. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And again, I wrote about this today, suggesting that when we get these debates going, it gets too caught up in, are you for letting the refugees in? Are you against letting the refugees in? I don't know. I think that there are a lot of Americans who believe that who want to do the right thing, who want to give people who are fleeing disastrous situations, to give them an opportunity in our great country. At the same time, you want to ensure that it's not an avenue for terrorism and that you're protecting the country. As I said, those are not mutually exclusive terms. It's just a question of how do we get there without getting really, really bogged down in some of the hyper political rhetoric on this thing. Okay, we're going to take a break and come back. And when we come back, Senator Mike Hall, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee on PEIA.
Imagine a scale, and you're trying to balance it. Too much on one side, and it sinks, just like our state's economy. When jobs are centered on one or two industries, the balance is off, our economy sinks, and good-paying jobs disappear. West Virginia needs a variety of industries, including fossil fuels, small business, and high-tech jobs to bring balance. The High Technology Foundation works to bring those high-tech jobs here. Ask your legislator if they're helping the High Technology Foundation bring balance to our economy. From the West Virginia High Technology Foundation.
Hello, I'm your neighbor.
Your sister.
Your son.
Your granddaughter.
I was broken, hungry,
helpless and hopeless.
Catholic Charities reached out to me in hope, faith, and love.
They were there in my time of need, and they'll be there for you.
No matter how old or young you are, Catholic Charities of West Virginia offers hope, help, and love for all ages. Visit CatholicCharitiesWV.org and find your hope today. Catholic Charities West Virginia is an equal opportunity employer and service provider.
This is Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Talkline on MetroNews. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Please welcome State Senator, Republican from Putnam County, Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Mike Hall. Senator, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Just fine.
Good, Mike. Thanks for coming on. So, you know the deal with PEIA, and we've talked about it. And we had Ted Cheatham on earlier, and PEIA held a series of public hearings and said this is what it is, that you're out of pocket and your deductible is going to go up, that premiums for retirees are going to go up because that's what has to be done to pay all the bills. The only other option would be for the legislature to approve higher premiums, or for the state to put through, starting with the governor determining the budget, to put in more money. Do you have any suggestion?
I think you've summed it up right there. And your insightful comments in the previous segment on the refugees, we could, try to figure out to be insightful here. One of the issues that I've looked at in terms of the PEIA problem, I think Ted talked about it earlier. I didn't hear him. I'm actually on my way back from Columbus. But that the fact that we've frozen these premiums at this 80-20 level by statute means that the only place you can go if you have an insurance problem is toward the benefit side. And maybe something could be done about that, although that comes with challenges.
Yeah.
For example, my son in the private sector, 3 years ago, he paid $3,600 a year for a $5,000 deductible. Now it's $10,000 a year for $15,000.
Sure.
So the private sector, the cost of medical care has, there's a medical inflation. It's, for some reason, it has gone up. And, you could argue, was it Obamacare, wasn't it, whatever. But the facts are reasonable people agree that they have gone up, and yet structurally, the way this plan is structured, as you've already vetted, I'm sure, there's no place you can go unless you add more cash or reduce the benefits, unless you could gradually take premiums up, which you haven't been able to do, as you've already discussed, for the past 4 or 5 years. It's interesting when it comes to health insurance, people think one of two ways. One, they'll pay a higher premium for a better benefit. But in a sense, if you never use that premium benefit in a given year, you've been better off paying the lower premium, the higher deductible.
Yeah, but you don't know.
But most of you don't know. So most people, particularly I've noticed in our state, particularly they like the richer benefit and are willing to pay a little more for it. But structurally, we can't do that with PIA unless that law is changed.
Well, could you change the law to allow more options for people? What if somebody in the state? And by the way, we also have this side issue that the PEI premiums are based on ability to pay, which is unlike any other insurance anywhere.
It is. You're right.
Which is another thing, but that's to help keep the program afloat too. But could you change the program so that if you wanted to pay a much higher premium but have a lower deductible out of pocket or a lower premium and a higher, could you give some more options there or not?
Well, I would like to think that we could. I mean, I think in looking at that 80-20 law that, I understand that there's some discussion going on at the Capitol right now about that and changing that so that you could do that kind of thing and you would give more options then to the person. Basically, there's either two kinds of people who will pay a higher premium for a richer benefit, people who will say maybe they're younger and healthy and they say, I'd like to pay a lower premium and I'll take the risk of a higher deductible. And I think that's right. And also what you mentioned about the ability to pay question, that ends up picking winners and losers. And some people are real winners in that, but other people are real losers.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works in the insurance world generally. And I think that ought to be addressed, but, obviously that would come with some pushback.
Yeah, that would have a lot. And the fact that, and again, this is kind of a secondary issue, but the fact that in West Virginia, if you make more money, you pay a higher premium, even though you might have the same coverage as somebody makes less money. I mean, yeah, you can make an argument for that if you make less money and you're trying to keep the program afloat. But if typically insurance is based on what kind of insurance you have and how big of a risk you are, not your ability to pay.
Yeah, it's supposed to be underwritten for your individual risk. I'm returning from a national conference of insurance legislators where we talk about these things all the time and various insurance issues that face different states around the country. I think we're pretty unique in how we position our health insurance premium collections here. But yeah, you're right. Some people, the risk is they're paying up. They're paying for somebody else while they're accepting, they're not getting the same actuarial bang for their dollar.
Exactly.
Which in the sense of fairness would be that everybody who pays a premium, it would be based upon their particular risk. If you're in a group, however, even now under Obamacare, you don't underwrite it anymore. You don't look at the risk entirely, but in this case, age or whatever is part of the factor.
Let me go back. Senator Baycall is with us, Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. Let me go back, though, and I don't even know if you all would get into that in the next year. Let me go back to these fundamental issues. The premiums have not gone up. Now they have for retirees, and they're proposed to go up for retirees, but the premium increases, there haven't been premium increases for state workers who are active for something like 4 years, and there also has not been an increase in the state share of the contribution for something like 4 years. So should the state put more money in? I think it puts in $420 million a year. Should the state put more money in? If so, where would that come from?
That's a good question. And as you get into the budget issues this year, I think that given the fact that the revenues are very far down and projected to be low, that priorities will have to be decided. And I would think that the insurance component would be a higher priority on the pecking order of things, so that as you're trying to squeeze dollars here or there, you would want to be fair to the plan, and perhaps move money from one place to the other. Now, you're right. I mean, if you're $300 million down again this year, there's problems. I mean, there's significant problems. I don't know if it's quite that much, $200 million. I'm talking about next year.
Yeah.
This year, with this severance tax collection, I mean, in the month of October, the projected revenue for coal severance was like $22 million. The receipts was $1.5 million.
Really?
So when you're down 20 million, when you're down that, now, I haven't seen the November. Obviously, we'll see the November numbers soon. But when you're down $60 million or so on that one item of coal severance tax collections, with some of the greatest minds projecting revenue are in our state, Mark Muco and the other guys over there, they missed that by $60 million.
So you're going to have Mike, and Senator Mike Hall's with us, chairman of Senate Finance. You're going to have a really difficult time, along with the governor determining a budget, and also on the House side determining a budget, working on budget, because you're going to have you got a decline in severance taxes. The tax revenue is not meeting projections. Number one, we don't see any significant improvement in the near term for coal. You got people saying, and me included, fix the roads, give employees a pay raise. Do something about PEIA. There's not going to be any money there. I mean, there's not going to be any real money there if you're talking about $50 or $100 million, $150 million. I don't think it's going to be there.
Yeah, you're correct. And we've got the Revenue Shortfall Reserve Fund. That's what I like to call it. It's known as the Rainy Day Fund, but it's not called that in the law. And so, you've got we do have fiscally, we have some of that money to look at, but it's not enough to fill the gap that we're seeing. So the governor's first step was to cut, agency spending by 4%, which is to get you $100 million of savings this year. And I think what's going to happen, this is the way I'm hearing it, in meetings with the governor and others, try to squeeze government to the point that you know what the level is you can operate government, and there be no more fat. And that's where we are. There's no money there. So, people are going to have to operate with less. Then there comes a point of which you have to determine, and then we can dig into some of these rainy day funds for the short run. The perfect world would be that you do that, not as you dig into the rainy day fund some for the next couple years, and hopefully the economy turns around and the revenues come back.
But you can't dig into rainy day fund, I don't think, for ongoing expenses. Like you can't give a pay raise based on rainy day fund because that money has to be there every year, and you tap out the rainy day fund.
Absolutely correct. You're absolutely right about that. One-time money cannot be used to increase a base expense. So that you're absolutely correct on that. And there is other money around state government in different reappropriated accounts other than the rainy day money that can be used and was used last year to help balance that budget. The budget was balanced not with the revenue entirely, but with some of that cash that was here and there around the state.
Do you think that do you think the cigarette tax should be increased and finally go to that well?
Well, personally, it makes a lot of sense to do that, but I don't think that there's a political will to accomplish that. I've listened to the leadership and different ones, and right now, unless we walk in there and see the problem is so great that you end up. You remember back in Gas and Caberton's time?
Oh my gosh!
When he came in, I hope we're not to that point, and I hope we don't, just have to jump at raising taxes as the first thing to think about. I think this session is probably not going to do that. I think what's going to happen is the first thing that's going to be looked at is the expenditures. And I know that's true. I mean, the governor really sets the tone on this because no matter what we add to his budget, he can line item veto out.
Sure. Hey, Mike, I gotta leave it there. We're gonna have you back. There'll be a lot to talk about during the legislative session, but it's going to be a fascinating time and a difficult time for the state of West Virginia. Thank you. State Senator Mike Hall, Republican, Putnam County, and also chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. We'll take a break and be back. This is Talkline on MetroNews, the voice of West Virginia. 11:30, let's get a news update. Check in with the MetroNews Radio Network. Let's find out what's happening statewide this hour, all across the great state of West Virginia.
West Virginia Metro News, I'm Jeff Jenkins. The electronic deer check-in system is already producing results on this first day of the deer gun season. State Division of Natural Resources tells Metro News nearly 1,400 bucks have been checked in by 10 o'clock this morning, along with 145 does. DNR biologist Chris Ryan says the bucks have got more age on them, which means another year of antler growth.
The normal age now that we harvest in West Virginia is at least a 2.5. Only 27% of the harvest is shown to be yearlings now. So the more average deer is definitely a 2.5-year-old deer. But when the kill was a little bit lower last year, you're going to have those 2.5 carry over. So you're going to have at least 3.5 or 4.5-year-old bucks. They're going to be more the typical of what people see.
Read more on the deer season at wvmetronews.com. The State Public Service Commission may begin moving again on the agency's general investigation into West Virginia American Water Company's response to the January 2014 chemical spill in the Elk River that resulted in a do not use order for parts of 9 counties. The PSC has scheduled a status conference on the case for December 15th. Members of the 12-member jury hearing the Don Blankenship criminal trial have returned to the Byrd Federal Courthouse in downtown Charleston today for their deliberations. Blankenship's lead attorney says some of those jurors are traveling a good distance for the trial. Bill Taylor said in open court back on Friday that half of the 12-member panel has a 2-hour round trip from their homes in Charleston, while another member has a 3-hour round trip. You're listening to Metro News for 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
Being a great hunter requires a lot of skill and a commitment to safety. Hunting for a great truck, however, only requires tracking down your nearest Ram dealer. That's because Ram 1500 is the only truck with an available class-exclusive EcoDiesel engine that gets up to 29 miles per gallon highway and can haul 9,200 pounds. See your local Ram dealer today. Guts, glory, Ram. Class based on light-duty pickups. EPA estimated 29 mpg highway based on HFE EcoDiesel V6 4x2. Actual results may vary. Towing capacity when properly equipped.
Four-wheelers have changed a lot about hunting in West Virginia over the years, but when used improperly or recklessly, they can be deadly. Always wear a helmet when you're operating your ATV. Always make sure you have the proper case or device to hold your rifle or bow in position while you're traveling and keep it unloaded. Be careful on climbing steep hills and learn all you can about your machine and what it can and cannot do in the field before you ride. This hunting safety message is service of Ram Trucks, built for those who stand apart.
Officials at Marshall University have been looking for space on the campus in Huntington, and part of that process has marked Laidley Hall for decommissioning. It will happen after this academic year. The building has in recent years housed student counseling services located on 3rd Avenue in Huntington. There could be tattoo parlors soon in downtown Charleston. The city's planning committee will discuss the proposed ordinance at a meeting set for tonight. There will be a few conditions, including clear windows and keeping the work being done there from being seen from the street. From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Jeff Jenkins.
Talkline on Metro News. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Start of gun season today. And with the start of gun season, when you go to check game, it's very easy now with your DNR ID number. Your DNR ID number. It's already working pretty quickly. I just heard Jeff Jenkins talk about it on the news there, the half hour. It's your unique number you use all your life when you are hunting. Every hunter and trapper must know theirs. Get yours today. You can still get it. WVHunt.com. WVHunt.com for your DNR ID number. So back to this Syrian refugee issue, not just about Syrians, but about all refugees. As I said, in federal fiscal year 2014, almost 70,000 refugees came from almost 70 countries around the world to the United States. I think just a small handful settled in West Virginia. Typically, the refugee program, they settle in sort of mid-sized communities. But Catholic Charities in West Virginia is working with the refugee program and joining us now on Metro News Talkline is Mark Slider, who's Executive Director of Catholic Charities in West Virginia. Mark, good to talk to you. Welcome in this morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Hoppy.
Thank you, Mark. So what is Catholic Charities doing? Who are you working with, and who have you been working with to bring to accommodate refugees, some of them Syrian refugees, in the state?
Right now, we do not have any Syrian refugees, but since July, we just have had a handful. We've had some from Burma, Eritrea, and Iraq.
Mm-hmm. Tell me the process you go through to try to resettle these folks in communities in West Virginia. Try to get them started again.
Sure. We received refugees from the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops, and we are a small resettlement agency. You're correct. Most of them go to larger-sized cities. So we only resettle about 50 a year, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. So once someone arrives, and everybody that comes is coming legally, then we help them assimilate into American culture. We do culture orientation. We help get their housing together, enroll them in school, help them get their Social Security cards, look for a job, help them with their English. So just the basic essential services that we're able to help with.
Mm-hmm. Who are now to qualify to be a refugee in this country? It's my understanding you must meet a certain standard, that you are a victim of persecution, religious or otherwise. It can be religious, it can be political. You're escaping a war-torn area, and then you have to go through a pretty rigorous screening process. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is a very rigorous process. Usually takes 18, 24 months, and it is probably the toughest way for anybody a foreigner to come over to the United States legally. And there's a lot of security background checks that they have to do.
Who are these people? And I know I'm sure they're all different, but are there commonalities? Are there people who are just trying to get away from a really bad circumstance and trying to get restarted?
Well, all the refugees have been persecuted in some sense, or it could be victims of torture. It could be based on religion, race, nationality, or various reasons why they are persecuted. So a lot of refugees are then, if we go back to Syria, a lot of them are now in refugee camps in Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. So out of that large number, there's like 4 million refugees.
Right.
Probably just a very few will actually be resettled. So out of that amount, as President Obama is petitioned to bring 10,000 over, and then we, as our agency, we were looking to resettle 100 Syrian refugees, and it not based in Charleston. It's throughout the state because right now we resettle refugees when they have a family member, and they may be bringing their spouse over or their child over. So we do resettle, for example, in Martinsburg and Morgantown, Charleston, and actually even Moorfield out in Hardy County.
Mark Sliders with us, Executive Director of Catholic Charities in West Virginia. So, Mark, you do anticipate, or there are plans in the works to resettle approximately 100 Syrian refugees in West Virginia. Is that correct?
If that does go through, yes, we do.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you got to see what happens in Washington because the House has passed a bill, and we got to see what happens with that. But I interrupted you, but go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to mention again, we do plan. I mean, we abide by the federal government, the laws, and so they're coming legally, and it's a very intense screening process, 18, 24 months. But we feel like this is the right thing to do. These are victims as well of ISIS or refugees from other countries from persecution. So we are a welcoming state, a welcoming country, and that is our goal to consider resettling refugees.
Yeah, and Mark, on that, Mark Sliders with us, Executive Director of Catholic Charities in West Virginia. Obviously, from the events of the past couple of weeks, it's become a very hot issue. It's a political issue in some respects as well as a security issue. How confident are you, and again, you're part of this, how confident are you that Syrians who may well be relocated in West Virginia, or Iraqis that may well be located in West Virginia, who are part of this exodus from that war-torn area, that they would be thoroughly checked out, thoroughly vetted, and would be here with hopes of starting a new life and not with any anticipation of starting any trouble?
Very confident. Since 2001, there's been hundreds of thousands of refugees that have been gone through the process, the vetting process, which was very tight after 9/11, and there are not terrorists from those events. I saw recently on CNN there's a law by Feinstein-Flake that they want to introduce, and that has more to do with tracking using the visa waiver program, because a terrorist as a refugee, that's the longest process, so it doesn't make any sense for them to go through that process and with all the security checks. But there's other ways that would be easier to come into the country, so I know now they're looking at closing other loopholes, which is a great idea.
Yeah, Mark Sliders with us from Catholic Charities in West Virginia. So you have personal experience with these folks? I mean, they're trying to, how easily do they acclimate to a very different setting? How challenging is it for them?
It really depends a lot on their support network. I think for the ones in West Virginia, they acclimate very well. They have other family members already here. A lot of it may depend on what their English skills are when they arrive and their educational level. A lot of refugees can be highly educated. So it's trying to find them a job quickly, and also on their the kids, they acclimate very well once they get into school. So it's more just continuing to work with them, looking for employment, and just helping them learn English and assimilate into American society.
Mark, what do you say to folks who right now are very concerned about security in the country, who may have or might even be a xenophobic response to people from outside coming in? And what do you say to those folks when you hear those kind of comments and conversations?
I think a lot of it's just education. The refugee program is simply the toughest way for a foreigner to legally enter into the United States. It's the 18-24-month screening process. There's a lot of criteria that's already in place now. So to me, I feel like it's pretty well vetted. All the refugees that are here, they go through the State Department, along with the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, national intelligence agencies. They're responsible for carefully vetting the refugees.
Yeah, there's a pretty extensive process, as we talked about. Mark Slider, Executive Director of Catholic Charities in West Virginia. Mark, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. Thanks for your time and your insights.
Thank you very much, Hoppy.
All right, good to talk to you. There's some important points there. And again, I am not diminishing the concerns about security in this country. I mean, post 9/11, you cannot be, post Paris, you cannot be dismissive of that. I understand that. But he made a really good point there, and that is that people who are coming here, part of the refugee program, are very extensively vetted. It's an 18 to 24-month program to be completely vetted. And there's a lot of, there's an interview process, there is a referral process, there's a background check, there's a higher level background check, there's a fingerprint screening, there's a cross-reference with security agencies, there's an extensive in-person interview, there's a cultural orientation class. There's a lot that goes on. Now, I'm not saying that somebody couldn't somehow beat the system, but it's not as though, as I understand it, it's not as though like, oh, okay, we're taking refugees and they just like get dumped here. And then it's a lot more involved in that. Just trying to bring this perspective to it, okay? We'll come back. When we come back, Tony Caridi joins us on No Shave November.
Constantly checking your business checking? Switching to an MVB Bank Foundation business checking account makes your cash management easier with no minimum balance, no monthly service fees, up to 500 free transactions per month, and access to MVB where you work. Visit MVBbanking.com to see how MVB Bank helps you build a foundation for your business. MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC. Transactions are checks paid and deposited and ACH debits. $50 minimum deposit to open, 20 cents for each transaction over 500.
Trading in your business fleet or personal vehicle for a new one? Donate your used vehicle to Good News Mountaineer Garage and get the best tax deduction possible and the satisfaction of knowing your donation changed the life of someone in need. Good News Mountaineer Garage repairs donated vehicles and provides them to qualified West Virginia families, giving them access to employment, safe, affordable housing, health care, and other vital necessities, and putting them on the road to economic independence. Call 1-866-GIVE-CAR today for Good News Mountaineer Garage. 866-GIVE-CAR.
This Saturday, the West Virginia Mountaineers return home for a Big 12 matchup with the Iowa State Cyclones. Join MetroNews for the best, most listened to game day coverage. The pregame fun starts at 9 a.m. with the Jeep Gold and Blue Countdown, followed by the Sports Brunch. Game line kicks off at high noon. Then postgame analysis begins at 3 with the Gold and Blue Wrap-Up, brought to you by the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. Don't miss game day coverage at its best, beginning Saturday morning at 9, right here on MetroNews.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Gosh, cops.
That's why Talkline law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Christmas in Shepherdstown kicks off Friday. Join the town. They have a bonfire. They have a chili cornbread supper, lighting of the town tree. Santa arrives. The annual tradition lasts until Christmas Eve and features many different events every weekend. So it's pretty cool. That's how they celebrate Christmas in Shepherdstown. For more information, go to wv.com. That's the website. Go to wv.com. Go to wv.com or call 1-800-225-5982. 1-800-225-5982. Email Hoppy. I'm happy you're discussing the issue in deeper details. Like I said, I myself was once one of those refugees 30 years ago. The refugee camp in my case, Nicholas says, was in Austria. The process was vigorous, as your guest said. I believe, however, he says, that the public has a right to know how this process works. And I agree with that, because this is like a lot of issues today. It does not necessarily lend itself, frankly, to the conventional talk show or talking head fare of let Syrian refugees in or don't let them in. Well, we have, by law, we let refugees into this country if they meet certain standards. As I said, since we let in about 70,000 a year from from 70 different countries who are trying to escape persecution, war, all kinds of things. That is in the law. If we don't like that, change the law. But there is a very high standard here and a very rigorous check that goes on in this country. And that's worth noting. I mean, a simple Google search will tell you the rigorous standards that are kept here. So I think that's important to note. This is No Shave November, and some of us at West Virginia Radio, as you know, are engaged in that to raise money for the Alzheimer's Association. Tony Caridi headed up the effort. He joins us on MetroNews Talkline. Tony, how's it going?
I'm well, Hoppy. Good morning to you.
All right. So how are we doing on the fundraising part, and what do people need to do if they want to contribute to the Alzheimer's awareness?
Sure, absolutely. It's easy to contribute, Hoppy. We've got a separate special website that was put together for this promotion, and the website is easy to remember. It's noshavewv.com. Noshavewv.com. Simply go there. It'll just say donate. It's easy. Just what denomination, your card, boom, you're in, and it'll be very, very appreciated, and so far so good. You know, we're heading down the home stretch. It's been a quick month. We're already at the 23rd.
Yeah, it has. So, and how is this money used that's going to be contributed? And by the way, I still need to contribute. I'm sorry, I told my wife, so this week we're going to make our contribution. But how's this money used by the Alzheimer's Association?
Hoppy, it's going to be used in several different areas. A lot of it will be used for education, and by that I mean they need to get the word out to the families and to the folks that have been diagnosed with this disease. You know, so much of this, Hoppy, is there's not, you know, a tremendous amount once the person is diagnosed with the disease that individual can do, but the caregivers, Hoppy, are just massive in this effort to help these folks out. There's over 100,000 people, family members, caregivers in West Virginia helping Alzheimer's patients right now. And so they use it for education. There needs to be a tremendous amount of support for these people that are doing this, because it is an absolutely draining situation and experience. And so they educate, they help, they support is what they'll be doing. And that's what a lot of this money will be going toward.
Yeah, so it's noshavewv.com.
Yeah, and your beard, I'm watching you right now on the internet stream. Your beard's coming in pretty good.
I don't know. I mean, it's a
Not
mixed.
bad.
It's coming in a little better than I thought, but I haven't done anything. I know that are you keeping yours trimmed up a little bit?
You know, the only thing I do is my neck. Other than that, is just kind of going straight out. So yeah, for the most part.
Because your neck, if you didn't, your neck would go down to your chest.
Well,
I mean, it would just be hair right down the.
It would ruin it would disintegrate shirt collars with one neck turn, is what it would do.
Yeah, mine's just, it feels weird. I can't keep my hands off of it. You know,
I know. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
And I'm 60 years old. It's the most facial hair I've ever had in my life.
I think it looks pretty good. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's pretty good looking. Yeah.
I might trim it. I don't know. The big question is whether I'm getting domestic pressure to get rid of it when the month is over. But
I was going to ask you about that. So that's. Yeah, well, hey, listen, you did what you had to do. It's a month. It's 1 month, and that's fine.
Is yours itching? Mine itches.
Last year it did. It was the first time I ever did it last year. This year, not really.
No?
Yeah, I think I opened up new paths last year, so this year it's really not bothering me.
All right. What'd you think of the Mountaineers last Saturday?
I thought that they did exactly what they needed to do. They went in and they left absolutely no question right from the opening kick of the game that, here, we're going to be here, we're playing today, took care of them. It afforded them an opportunity to get literally on the defensive side, every single player who made the trip got into the game. So I think that, they got a lot of confidence as they get ready to come back here for this Iowa State game. I find it interesting that Iowa State, made the call early with Paul Rhodes.
Yeah.
He will be gone as their head coach, but he's going to coach this week's game in Morgantown, and so.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Well, I think.
They fired him. They fired Paul Rhodes, but they're going to coach the game in Morgantown.
Here's what I think. I don't understand why you did it yesterday. Why don't you wait until next Sunday? I mean, it's not like what's this? They did it now, so what's that mean? They're going to be able to go out there and get a coach, so no one else takes the coach they want. I don't think they're burning a quick path to Ames to get the football coaching job there. So I just thought. They did it. And I think the reason why, Hoppy, is because people are in arms the way that they lost on Saturday. They had the game against Kansas State won. They made some technical errors in how to coach that thing in the final 90 seconds. And as a result of that, I think people are just so fired up that they made the call yesterday.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I like the guy. And he's a great guy. But wins and losses, man.
Hey, man, they gave him a heck of a run. I mean,
what
7 years.
Yeah, they did.
And at Syracuse, I saw today, they fired their guy after 3. So they didn't wait that long. You make the wrong hire, Hoppy, it screws you for a long time. Paul Pasqualone's last year at Syracuse was 2004. They've been upside down now for over a decade. Greg Robinson, Marone, and now this guy. They've been upside down. You remember where they were and where they are now? It's night and day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think going back, I think Paul Rhodes was. You could make a lot of arguments that was a good hire, Iowa State guy, but it's tough to win there, and so
it's tough to win. And while he's been there, Baylor has emerged, TCU was added, and now they're looking at themselves, going like, "What are we going to do? Are we going to stay like this forever?" And so they you take a chance.
Yeah. All right, Tony Caridi and Snow Shave November quickly coming to an end. Make a donation at noshavewv.com to benefit the Alzheimer's Association. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Hop.
All right, man. We'll be right back.
Have you ever wondered just who are the Friends of Coal? Well, there are 50,000 West Virginia families who support the state's coal industry, and they look a lot like you. Honest, hardworking, good neighbors who want a future for themselves and their state. They're coal miners, housewives, school teachers, mechanics, doctors, college professors, pizza delivery guys, your friends. The Friends of Coal know and understand the importance of the coal industry to our state's economy. They know about the 60,000 jobs the coal industry creates in our state. They know about the $25 billion the industry pumps into our economy. And they know that without coal, our state would face an economic catastrophe. Come to think of it, that sounds like most West Virginians. Let Congress know you are a proud West Virginian, and you are a friend of coal.
Coal is West Virginia.
True to its motto, wild and wonderful, West Virginia is the third most forested state in the country for landmass and has 7 million more forested acres now than 100 years ago. The mountain state is abundantly blessed with valuable renewable forest resources, which naturally regenerate for future generations. Forestry is the basis for over 5,000 separate wood and paper products, creating millions of dollars in state revenue from business income and property taxes. A message from the West Virginia Forestry Association, WVFA.org.
Is your business or organization struggling when it comes time to tell your story? After all, your story is what makes you unique. Your story is what makes potential clients and customers draw themselves to you. Unfortunately, oftentimes, those stories aren't told and businesses and organizations remain mired in mediocrity. At Pikewood Creative, we produce videos and commercials in a way that make people take notice. If you need some visual help, then visit us at pikewoodcreative.com.
This is Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Here in West Virginia, 2 great jackpot games you can play from the lottery. Powerball has drawings on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Mega Millions Tuesdays and Fridays. Powerball jackpot, $90 million. And Mega Millions jackpot, $25 million. Please play responsibly. Got to run. See you tomorrow. This has been Talkline on Metro News, the voice of West Virginia.